So it's another day, the weather's absolutely miserable, but I've got to get some more insulation board up in that loft. And to fix this in place, I'm just using standard drywall screws. And I've got these penny washers. Now you can get like plastic or metal washers for insulation boards specifically, and they're similar or the same as the stuff that you use for like hardy backer board for tiling onto. But these are a bit expensive, and to be honest with you, I don't need many fixings in this because obviously I'm going to be securing a plasterboard over the top. So I thought I'd just go for these penny washers. They were about £4, I think, £4 and 15 pence, something like that, for 100. And these will do just the job. I'm probably only going to need something like 4 or 6 screws in each board maximum. The washers will hold it securely into place, and then obviously the plasterboard, I'll fix that up with the right number of screws, and that'll hold all the insulation in place anyway. So I don't want to go overboard with the fixings. And as for the screws, you just need to use whichever screw is suitable depth wise. I mean, you want to go in about 20 to 30 mil, I guess, into your rafters. If you were doing this on smaller timbers, you want to make sure that the screw isn't any deeper than the timber it's going into, because obviously it'll protrude out the other side, which you don't want, and that would be excessive anyway. So really just make sure, if you're going to do this, the screw that you're using covers the depth of your insulation board and allows you that fixing into your rafter. Now when I put the plasterboard over the top, I'll obviously need to use slightly longer screws, taking into account the depth of the insulation and the depth of the plasterboard, and an additional amount to go into that rafter. Just before I carry on with any more boarding, I'm just going to show you quickly what I've done. So using a pencil, I just roughly marked all this board to size. I had to do a little notch over there around a piece of timber, blah blah blah, around the window. You get the general idea. And then using those drywall screws you can see there, and a penny washer, you just drive those in, not too hard because you will break the foil. But if you get it just about right so it creases, it'll sit and make a little dent in the insulation board so that your plasterboard will go nicely over the top and that won't be in the way. That's all I've done. You can see I've just put a couple there. This one I've had to put a few more in because obviously I got this odd cut, but if you had a nice long rectangle, you probably only need 6, maybe 9 of these washers and screws, and that should do the trick until you get your plasterboard underneath, which will drive it up. Now one thing I will do before I insulate the top half of these rafters is get a straight edge from that bit of the rafter, follow it down to the bottom, and draw a pencil or a pen line down each rafter, and that way when all the board is covering all the rafters, you know exactly where the rafters are underneath. And you're going to need to know that when you put your plasterboard on, because what you don't want to do is be missing with your screws and firing them up the side, especially if you've got electrical cables like I've got there, because if you miss, there's a chance your screw will go through one of those. Mentioned, what you saw me doing there was just marking out those rafters before I forget. That way I've got nice pen lines now from top to bottom, and I know when I place my plasterboard up, regardless of whether I've covered all the rafters by then with insulation, I know exactly where to go with my screws to get a good bite into that timber. If you have a look, you can see that this insulation board just depresses slightly when you put enough pressure on this, and you want that balance. You don't want to tear the metal foil facing on that, but what you want to do is have it sink slightly so you can see those slight creases forming, so that when you put the plasterboard over the top, it's going straight over without anything sticking into it. You can see the same on that one and the same on that one. And as for how many you put in, it's entirely up to you. Like here, it's a bit loose, but to be honest with you, when I put the plasterboard over that, that'll fix up and hold it into place anyway, so I don't want to go too mad with the washers. So it's interesting just to show you, right, is having an absolute downpour outside at the moment, and where we've done this ladder for this overhang, you'll notice I can leave that whole front of that window open there, and unless you get really bad wind driving this way, it pretty much always stays dry. And it goes to show how having a really good overhang, if you can have one, makes such a difference, because as the rain comes down it just sort of shelters that first foot or two of your roof and the wall, more importantly. So I mean, on any house, if you're thinking of doing something like that, or a roof and there's the opportunity to do it, it makes such a difference. And it means you don't get those drips off the side and down the wall, which on an old house like mine, on the back of the house we've got a solid wall and no cavity, which you may have heard me discuss in my other videos where I'm talking about damp and that kind of thing. Makes such a difference. It means you haven't got these trickles of water just running down the wall trying to soak through your render, so just keeping the house nice and dry. There we go, you can see that, look. Look, that's the felt there, tiny bit of moisture, but you know, you look around here on the floor, there's absolutely nothing. See, bone dry. You see all that lead out there? That's more or less dry as well. All these slates here on the wall, relatively dry. I don't know if any of the BDI of you out there just noticed that. I've just put this insulation board up there, secured it nicely, and I tucked the cables up while I was going to measure it up. And inside the hole, there's 2 holes there I've got to drill and I don't know where they are. So guess what? This is coming back off. And these are the joys of this kind of work. When you're getting tired at the end of the day and you're losing concentration, these things happen all the time. It just slows you up. It's just unnecessary. But there we go. Problem solved, but that was about 10 minutes wasted. So I'm back up in the loft. It's another day of cutting insulation. It's actually freezing outside because we've just had that bout of snow in early February. But luckily, because I'm doing the insulation, it's actually not too bad in here, so I'm probably a bit overdressed. But again, I've got the waterproofs back on, so I think I'm going to make a bit of mess today. As I've said before, you can brush those fibres off nice and quick. Try doing this in a fleece and good luck getting all the stuff out of the fleece. And these are the jobs that you don't always see on the camera. I don't always put it in because it's a bit boring, but just getting this insulation in. I'll give you an example. Today is Saturday, right? You get 2 days off work out of 7, and either Saturday or Sunday or both I'm usually up here doing this. Today is Six Nations Rugby. Now I'm not a big rugby fan, but it's nice to go out sometimes, enjoy yourself. I imagine all my mates are out. I say mates, I don't know if I got any mates anymore because I'm up here all the time. And the weather out there is blowing a gale. These insulation boards are acting as a sail, so I'm climbing a scaffolding. The moment the wind catches it, it's trying to take me off the scaffolding. Added to that, it's been snowing. The snow's now gone, it's defrosted a little bit. It froze last night, so it's slippery as hell out there. And that's what I've had to contend with. I've just been coming up the ladders, which had ice on them this morning. You've got ice, you can see all the way along there on the scaffolding. We've got ice down there. Luckily the ice on the stepping stone I'm using to get up here is defrosted now, but it's bloody lethal with that wind. You're sliding along on your feet, and doesn't take much before you're over that scaffolding. I'll be down there in that trailer. So obviously just bear that in mind when you see me doing all this DIY. It's great, and you know, keep the cost down. With projects like this, you know, there's going to come a point when sometimes you just get sick of it. I mean, insulation, I've told you before over and over, I don't enjoy doing it. I don't get any pleasure from it. The finished result is all covered up anyway, so you don't even see it at the end. It costs a lot of money, so I would say this in particular insulation I actually got, it was like seconds, what they call A-grade seconds. You don't really notice the difference. There's ever so slight bow in it, which when you screw it in, takes the bow out anyway, so it's a lot cheaper. But even so, as a cost of part of the project, it's probably cost me not far off, I would say 10% of the project was the insulation on this. So one thing with doing these projects yourself is you get to spend a lot of time with the project, you know, before it's finished. Whereas if you get builders in, obviously you see the completed job, you don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. And it's things like these fascia vents I put on, and you saw me do that in an earlier video. You would think with the tiny little holes in them they wouldn't let much air up through. But where I've got this air gap between my insulation and the felt, it's incredible. When you go underneath where I've cut these holes out for the downlighters, there's a hell of a lot of wind coming through here. I put my head there, I don't know if you can see any foam blowing off my hair, but it's It's really blowy, like, it's amazing. So you can really see how things like that will make a difference. If you've got any condensation in there, that airflow is just going to dry it out, blow out the moisture, keep it nice and dry, and then you're not going to get any damp patches in your roof. Now on the roof, I haven't overboarded or underboarded, don't know what you call it really, on the other side of the cheeks of the dormers or any of that. I'll be doing that later. That's not going to get done today. This time of year it's getting dark again. I'm knackered, so I'm not going to be out here long now. I want to go in. All I've had is 2 pieces of toast today. Anyway, I've got to get on with it. So what I'm going to do now is expanding foam now in all the joints I've got left here. If I get a chance, I'm going to run a load of tape as well over the joints. Maybe I'll do that tomorrow if I've got to leave the foam go off. Yeah, and then I'll give you a quick look around the loft. Right, so looking quickly on this side, you can see obviously we've underboarded now right down there. Put these little bits in at the end. Rather than cut the board around, it was too fiddly, so I just put little bits there. I'll show you on this side. I've done exactly the same. I've got down there, you can see them. I've just been along there with the expanding foam. All the way along there, look, so they're all done now, right the way up to the ceiling. Going around the room, again a bit dark. You can see I've just put expanding foam on the slight gap at the middle there where it met the ridge board, and these boards join anywhere where there's a slight gap. I've basically been down with foam. I'm going to let that go off now. I'm not going to tape it today. I'm going to try and get up here tomorrow and tape. Again, I've got to board all the cheeks, do that at a later date, but you can see now it's basically the board between the rafters. We're underneath, we've got all the cables back through. And we're in a sort of position now where maybe once this is done we can have a tidy up and think about possibly getting some more wiring through the floor now, because what I'd like to do is get to a point where I can get my insulation in the floor. I've got to put some chicken wire over here. I spoke to the building control officer, and then that'll hold my insulation. If you look down there you can see the ridge board from my other roof that heads off into the back garden, not part of the loft conversion. Now in the gap down there between the joists, I've got to try and bring up my plumbing. I've got to tap into the central heating system. I'm going to put a radiator somewhere along here. So I want to bring, I'm just going to use speed fit, the plastic fittings is a lot better for me really, because it's quicker to get it up here. I can run it straight up through the joist just like electrical cable, and then I'll probably put 2 isolation valves on the end of it here so I can mess around with it at a later date. But once that's up and under the floors, and I get the cable in as well from my back bedroom for the lights, I can finish off the floor, which would be good. I'll get my insulation back in there, all the rock wool, get the boards over, then I'll have 2 cupboard spaces there and obviously over there, and I can start storing more stuff in here, and then think about doing the centre of the room then and getting all my insulation down, floorboards, etc., and it'll tidy it all up. I'll be honest, I'll be glad when this job is done. It's really getting on my nerves. I hate doing insulation. It's just tedious, time consuming, and if you look in this loft, looking around you, you can't even get 1 full sheet on here, because you either hit a Velux window or you hit the hip structure, or you hit the ridge board, and that's got an angle on it and a taper. And you go over there, you've got your Velux window, you've got the little dormer I've put on the back, and they're all pitched roofs like that. They've all got the hip rafters on them, which go that direction, so you're always cutting angles on them. So it's a pain really. I thought it was going to be quite easy doing this, and actually I was wrong really. If you've got a bigger room and you can have a good run of it, it's a lot more enjoyable, because you can get loads of big boards on, you feel like you've done a lot in a day. But unfortunately, when you're doing this, you're constantly cutting around things and it just gets on your nerves. Like I say, it's another day I've been up here, and alright, it's getting somewhere now, but it's a good few days now I've had on just doing insulation on and off. I've only been doing 4 or 5 hour days, but it's nice to get it done and get some plasterboard in here, isn't it? Saturday today, so I might go in and treat myself to a nice old speckled hen. I fancy a nice drink now, relax on the sofa. I've got a bad back. So we're back again. It's bitterly cold out there, and although it's perfectly comfortable to work with that hatch off, I've got it closed basically in a bid to try and keep the house warm downstairs. So I pretty much finished all the insulation on the ceiling yesterday, so the first task today is to go around all the expanding foam I put in, trim it back down, and then we'll go and tape up all the joints. Now, typically I just ran out of tape and I probably only need another 5 metres. I'll end up having to buy a 50-metre roll probably. As you can simply see where I've just taped up any of the joints, this part of the room was pretty good because I did it in large sheets. Obviously when I got over here it got more fiddly, so you'll find that, you know, I've had to use a bit more tape because I've used a few more pieces of board, like up here for example where I've been cutting out small sections. You can see some bits there, they're the bits that are still left to tape up. Obviously I've been between all the joints with foam now, so I've just been sawing it back, going over it with tape, so everything's nice and sound. By the time I finish the tape, it'll all be done and I can start doing the cheeks of the dormers then. So I'm back from Screwfix. I had to go all the way down there just to buy one roll of tape. Anyway, let's finish off the taping. Day. I've got to be in again now, so what I haven't just shown on the camera, because I wouldn't have got the camera in there and it would have made for very good viewing watching the back of my head, is a bit of insulation between me and next door, and I'll show you that now. So you can see in that there's a few joints because I've tried to use smaller pieces of insulation I had left lying around, but I'm not too concerned about that because this is between me and next door, so it's an interior wall anyway, which you would have seen me build that, the block wall, in an earlier video, part 4 I believe. And then going over to the other side, remove that light. You can see I've just done the same in there. When I get a chance next time, I'll obviously fill any small gaps with filler again, or foam filler, expanding foam, whatever you want to call it, and then I'm going to go over it with tape as well, just like the rest of the roof. So I just stand behind the light and just try and give you a bit of an overview of what we've achieved now so far. It's a bit dark, so I'm using this light, sorry. But you can see now everything's taped up. Everything, well, all you can see is insulation now, other than down on those cheeks. So that's pretty much it. Obviously, one thing I have got to do, and I'm not going to do that yet, is insulation around the windows. I'll do that probably when I plasterboard it, and then I can cut the insulation at a slight taper, and I may take the edge off these insulation boards in so that I can put the plasterboard at an angle that way. And what that does is it brings the light in to the room. If you had it at 90 degrees like that, I'll show you here now. If you put the board at 90 degrees there, light can only come in this way, but if you taper it from there and just go outwards to this board, that little bit of extra angle there will just bring that light down there and shine it straight down onto the wall. So when it's nice and bright in the summer, it'll be lovely and airy in here, and obviously I'll do that with all 3 Valix windows. So I've really got to get in now because I've got to have a quick shower and I'm meant to be out in about half an hour. So quick brush down, quick shower, get this locked up, and I'll see you next time I'm up here. So I'm back again after not being up here for about 2 to 3 weeks, so maybe me doing this loft conversion for you is giving you inspiration not to do it yourself, seeing how long it's taken me, but there we go. Today the plan is to use the remaining thick insulation boards that I've got, that I was using between the rafters, and I'm going to cut those to size to go over here underneath the purlins. So if you look over there, when I say underneath the purlins, I mean between the main loft space and the cupboard space. Obviously I'm going to put a door on one part of the cupboard space on both sides of the loft, but the remaining bits where I got those stud timbers are going to have insulation between them. That's what I'm going to cut out now. I'm not going to fit them into place today because I'm obviously using that for access in and out. It makes it a lot easier. I don't want to be crawling in and out when I need to get access. But what I'm going to do is cut them to size, I'm going to number them up, and then I'm going to stack them all underneath the cupboard space so I can fit them into place later on in the project. And I've just tapped them roughly into place. I'm going to remove them all now, number them up, and then I'm just going to stack them back in that cupboard. And obviously if there's any tiny little gaps around the edge, I'll go around those with the expanding foam as and when I fit them later on in the project. tucking those away there so I can put them straight into place when I'm ready to use them. It also means that these sheets of large board I got on the floor here I can use up, get them out of the way, and try and get through all the insulation stage, so I'm all done and dusted. I don't have to have any more insulation board in the loft, so when I put the stairs in I can start working from the inside. It means I'm not making a mess of the house downstairs, because obviously there's going to be areas where I need to build a few walls first. So when I first open up the loft with the stairs, it's going to be open to the landing basically, so I don't want bits of dust floating around and going downstairs. Now I've just got to do exactly the same thing to the other side, number them in the same way, and I'll stack them in that side of the loft. So I've cut all the insulation and I've roughly fitted it into place over there. You'll notice I've left a couple of gaps where I've decided I want some cupboard doors for access into that space. I was always going to leave one here, but as I've been going along, I've been kind of working out as I'm moving around the loft what feels sort of ergonomic, what's the best way to do it, and I'm trying to forward plan a bit and think about how I would lay this out if it was a bedroom. And the main things that you really have to think about are, for example, like where you're putting a bed, because they're big things, where you might want to put units. Now obviously in a loft conversion you've got pitched roofs, so it's unlikely you're going to be putting tall cupboard space and things like that. But if you want doors or you want things like beds, you need to think about where you're going to put them. Now obviously if you're going to put a bed against the wall, you don't want something like a radiator behind it. Now initially I was thinking put a radiator over there under that dormer, but with a few measurements I've been working out there's a possibility you could place a bed either there or over on this side there. So what I'm doing is keeping my options open. So I'm going to actually move this cupboard over here across a little bit that way. So I'm going to add one bit of insulation there and I'm going to move that cupboard opening across one. And then that one there I'm going to take the pillar out and leave access there. And that means you've got good access round to the left, round to the right. This one you've got access round to the left there, and you've got good access round to the end of the cupboard. And it also means I've left enough space down the end to put my radiator, which is where I want it. Because I kind of want to put a radiator on a bit of wall that's not really going to have any other use, and that's a perfect place to have it. If I place it over there, there's a good chance that you might want to put a bed or a desk or something like that against it, so I don't want to limit my options. And the other thing is I need to know where my radiator is going to go now, which I've just been thinking about, because I need to get this pipe work up very soon so I can get on with boarding the floor. And the last thing I want to do is put it in the wrong place and then have to rip up all the floorboards again. So it's a bit of a pain, but you've got to think about these things as you're going along. Now some people would probably have architects' plans for this kind of thing. I haven't, because I've sort of done it all myself. And then builders would just build it to that spec. But without a doubt, when you're in the loft like me doing this, and it's the same as once you actually live in a space, you start to see how you might maybe alter things. So whilst there's a design that looks all well and good on paper, when you're in here you think, do you know what, I probably would have rather the radiator there and I could put my desk over there or move my bed there, that kind of thing. So for me, I enjoy doing this because as I'm moving around the loft I'm sort of thinking, oh actually, that bit's a bit low there, that's the sort of place to put a radiator. You don't want to place it where it's nice and high and you might have a desk or a piece of furniture. So it's really good to move around, have a think about how you'd actually use the space. Done all this insulation now over the timbers and screwed them in. I filled them with expanding foam. I haven't taped them up yet because I've got to let the foam go off dry. I've left this exposed because that's where all my junction boxes go in for all the lighting. And I've just had a tidy up around here as well. You can see all those bits of polystyrene foam or insulation board have all gone. They're obviously still there, but I've bagged up all the small bits. Now it's all I've got to do is bring in from the end room, on that end bit of my house down there, my plumbing pipes next and the electrical cable, and I'm going to try and do that tomorrow morning if possible.